Thank you so much, JoAnne. And I'd like to thank all the chapter presidents of the Pap Corps. Can you hear me okay? Is the microphone? Yeah, okay. I'd like to also thank Rich Ballard, who's the CEO of Sylvester, for being here today. It's important for us. Our board member and one of the founders of our institution, Jayne Sylvester Malfitano. I'd also like to thank the doctors who've come. You've heard Brian Slomovitz, Arthur Zelent, and Mohammad Jahanzeb, who took time from their very busy days to come and be with us. This is an incredibly important event for us. We need to thank you for your leadership and your support of the Sylvester Cancer Center over these years. You've been one of our greatest assets. All told, provided over $50 million for research, potentially life-saving research that's affecting the lives of patients today and far into the future. There are three things that I wanted to talk about. One is location, the other is facilities, and the third is going to be the people. So first of all, the monies that have been given since I've been here have been extremely helpful in helping us recruit new people. Some of the people who are here are Arthur, Ronan, and Brian Slomovitz are new recruits, and they're really among the very best in the world at what they do, and they're now at Sylvester and can serve the community here in South Florida. It's been about 2.5 years since I came from New York. So far, we've recruited now 50 physicians and scientists from top-tier institutions to join our team, including some of the brightest minds in the field of hematologic cancer research. With your support, we've also been able to extend the footprint of Sylvester across our region. We have facilities now in Plantation, Hollywood, Coral Springs, Deerfield Beach, Kendall, and downtown in Miami. And in 2016, we're going to open a very iconic building in Coral Gables, which will have 2 floors, almost 2 floors of it devoted solely to cancer. And so these facilities allow us to bring our evolving world-class care, and Florida's really only academic-based cancer center care, to our communities to make regional convenience for the excellence that we bring to the table. In addition to being in more locations, we've been upgrading the equipment that we have. You may have read that with a very generous donation from Paul Damari, who's on the Board of Trustees, we purchased what's called a Da Vinci robot for robotic surgery. We were the first academic center in the world to use this new Da Vinci robot. And what's equally important is the doctor who was using the robot, Dr. Dipen Parekh, who's one of the top urologists in the world. We've also are putting in place a way of giving radiation therapy called the ViewRay. So the ViewRay uses MRI to guide where the radiation goes. And just to make it simple, when you breathe, when you move, if the radiation is given in a fixed way, it'll start missing the tumor and start hitting the normal tissue. And so this uses an MRI instantaneously to move where the radiation is going as patients breathe or move, cough, whatever they may do during the radiation. There are only 4 of these in the United States, and 1 is at Sylvester. We've also instituted for prostate cancer research a new way of melding ultrasound and MRI. We have one of the only equipment that does this in the United States, and we're doing research and hope to soon have our first publication about what an advance it is in order to detect very small amounts of serious prostate cancer. All of these things we're doing in part to get our National Cancer Institute designation, but also, which we hope to apply for in about 3 years from now, but also so we can best serve the community and the people who we all love. We could not have done this without your hard work. Joe, you all work tirelessly to raise money for us, and I can guarantee you that we work diligently. You know, I tell people sometimes we work a half a day, okay? And so that would mean from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so we're working diligently because the mission that we have and our goal is so important. You know, the technology and things really are only as good as the people who use these technologies. And so our greatest resource is our people, and this year I'm incredibly proud that we're able to have an endowed professorship. So you've given us money, we've used the money for research, and this is the beginning of a legacy. So this endowed professorship will generate funds that will support research in leukemia, the work done by Dr. Swords, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. But over time, the hope would be is that we could have endowed professorships in a variety of areas that would focus on breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, and that these gifts would be in perpetuity so that there will be Pap Corps professors in these different areas 50 years from now, 100 years from now, you know, and beyond 100 years, I can't really say that any of us will be around to see that, but presumably beyond that as well. So let me introduce Dr. Swords to you. We had a committee internally that reviewed the potential recipients of this award, and it was really a unanimous first choice of the committee that Dr. Swords should be the recipient of the first Pap Corps Endowed Professorship in Leukemia. For those of you who aren't so familiar with an endowed chair, the interest raised off the monies that have been given are used on an annual basis to fund the research that Dr. Swords and his colleagues will do. And Dr. Swords is really becoming one of the leading experts in the United States and therefore the world in leukemia treatment. I think I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about some of the clinical trials that he's started since coming to Sylvester in 2012. But I would like to introduce him a little bit in the way that we introduce grand round speakers and others in a medical situation. I'm going to abbreviate it a little bit, but let me tell you that in 2000, Dr. Swords received his MD degree from the National University of Ireland, Galway. He did internal medicine training in Ireland. He did a hematology fellowship there. And in 2009, he came to San Antonio, Texas, and joined the University of Texas, San Antonio, to do a drug development fellowship with one of the pioneers in leukemia research. He became an assistant professor there, and in 2012 was awarded a PhD for his research in leukemia, jointly given by the University of Texas and by the National University of Ireland. Ronan came to Sylvester in 2012, a few months, actually I think about a month before I got there, and we were in pretty continuous communication beforehand to talk about what our vision would be for a leukemia program that would be among the best in the world. Dr. Swords is on numerous committees. He's one of the leaders of the leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma site disease group at Sylvester, and he is on our clinical trials advisory committee, blah, 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 lots of other committees that I could tell you about. He's published over 70 papers in his field. He's given important talks in the United States and in Europe, most recently at the European Hematology Association national meeting. And it's really a great honor for me to be able to present him with this endowed professorship, and a real privilege to have him as a colleague. So I'm going to, if we can give him a warm hand of, and
Steve, thank you very much for that kind introduction. So I want to start by thanking JoAnne and the members of the Pap Corps. It's a real privilege and an honor for me to accept this award. And I want to commend you as a group for the work that you do. It's to take time out of your busy schedules to raise money for cancer research is a very noble and honorable thing to do, particularly at a time when it's difficult to fund the research that we do. I also want to thank Steve. To my certain knowledge, I wouldn't be standing in front of you here today without Steve's mentorship, support and guidance. So maybe I'll tell you a little bit about me personally in terms of what I do and why I do what I do. So I was born and raised in Galway City in the west of Ireland. A city by Irish standards, a town by American standards, about 150,000 people, university town. And so I did my medical degree in Galway. And then I did my internship and my fellowship in Ireland, and I learned how to take care of patients with blood diseases. And so as I was going along, I started to get interested in leukemia and in developing better treatments for patients with leukemia. So I decided I needed more training to do that. And I moved over to San Antonio, Texas, from miserable Irish weather to hot Texas sun in August of 2008, and I thought to myself, I've made a huge mistake here. Because Irish people aren't used to that kind of weather. But I worked with my mentor at the time, Frank Giles, who was the deputy director of the Cancer Center, who happened to be an Irishman. And he was running a fellowship program in drug development, so I learned about writing clinical trials and treating patients on clinical trial protocols. And then I decided I would go into the lab and learn about the diseases and the patients that I was treating. So interacting with basic scientists like Dr. Zelent and others and moving ideas from the lab into the clinic. So after all that, I decided it's time now to focus and treat patients with leukemia. And so I decided to move down to Sylvester in February of 2012, largely to work with Steve and to take the opportunity to develop an adult leukemia program. Now, we've got a lot of leukemia patients in South Florida, so this was a huge opportunity for me. And since my arrival, we've had year-on-year growth. The program is growing very quickly. We've just appointed a new leukemia doctor from Sloan Kettering, Dr. Justin Watts. We have a big team of specialized doctors, from bone marrow transplant doctors to hematopathologists, to nurses, to specialized nurses, to patient care coordinators, to social workers, and we take a real team approach in taking care of our patients. And I learned recently that our patient satisfaction scores are 99%. Best patient satisfaction scores across the Cancer Center. So we're really proud of that, and we're really proud of how our patients appreciate the care that they're getting. So in addition to the goal of providing excellent care, what we want to do is do research. And we've done some pretty exciting, cool things in the area of leukemia research. So one of the people that I work closely with is Arthur Zelent. So Arthur has spent a lot of time working in the lab developing vitamins, vitamin A in particular, to treat leukemia cells. And so he recently discovered that a combination of vitamin A with an antidepressant drug combined is a very powerful anti-leukemia treatment. And our IRB this past Monday has just approved us to study this combination in patients with refractory leukemias. So this is novel. It's the idea of repurposing drugs that are already out there for a leukemia indication. So if you think about what is required to develop a new treatment in terms of a targeted approach, it means you've got to identify a target in the leukemia cell. You've got to build a drug that hits the target. You've got to show that the drug works. Then you've got to do a phase 1 trial, then a phase 2 trial, and then a phase 3 trial. And if you're lucky, the FDA will approve a new treatment. Now that process takes about 10 years and costs about $2 billion. And that's money and time that my patients don't have. So if there are therapies that are out there that we can repurpose immediately, you know, that are pills, that are non-cytotoxic treatments, that's great for our patients. And we're doing something similar with Scientists in Steve's lab also using anti-inflammatory medicines, the type of medicines you take for arthritis, and repurposing those for leukemia. So right now we've got some very, very exciting clinical trials of targeted treatments, probably the most exciting targeted treatment in leukemia right now. So there are a group of leukemia patients that have a particular type of leukemia. And these patients, after multiple attempts to get their disease into remission with chemotherapy, where those attempts have failed, come onto a clinical trial. And they get a pill, and they take a pill twice a day, and half of the patients that we've treated across multiple centers in the US have gone into remission. So that's spectacular. Maybe I'll conclude by just saying that, again, it's a real honor for me to be able to accept this award. And just to let you know that we are going to do everything possible to use these endowed funds to really show you the impact that you are making for the patients that we care for in our local community and internationally. So thank you once again. It's a privilege.
So it's now my privilege to be able to present both to Dr. Swords and to JoAnne Goldberg a plaque that reads, "The Pap Corps Champions for Cancer Research, Pap Corps Endowed Professorship in Leukemia, inaugural recipient, Ronan T. Swords, MD, PhD, FRCPI, FRC Path, October 9th, 2014, Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center." Thank you so much.